Welcome back, everybody, to part 3 of our beautiful and fascinating discussion with Brandon Hennis. So, like you were saying a moment ago before I pushed record, you were just getting done saying, last week we got through the hard stuff. Now, let's talk about the good stuff. Okay, fine. You basically have another hour and a half until I stop you and bring the interview and bring the story to a crescendo and to a beautiful conclusion. So I'll mute my microphone. Get into it. What's going on? Part 3, go.
All right, so to recap for the masses, we went into the swings and arrows of outrageous fortune, the plus, the minuses, the details, and the bangs and the twangs and the fangs of the wolves of the packs. And that's why we now come to a lot of the good stuff that we now come to. So now we come to 2025 me. The me that we all know today. A guy who has gotten to start doing a lot of podcast recordings on the old Gcast back in the day, as far as right before doing Icecast streaming. Some friend of mine on Ventrilo found a website called Gcast. I don't know how many people remember that, but what you could do is record these podcasts on your phone. You could record the podcasts on your phone, and you could actually hear the result, and later on download it, and it did all the levels for you. You just made sure you recorded from a good phone. I always had a rule when it came to recording on Gcast: do not use speakerphone while recording. I learned that the hard way when one of the phones I had speakerphone, and we actually ran into a nice little issue where. Thank you, feedback, for integrating yourself into that. That was the old analog speaker phones, not the digital ones like we see now. This was an old kind of a quirky desk phone that I had. It was that had fairly decent audio for listening. Its talk audio was a little bit much for what it was, but it worked, and it was what I used a lot for a very long time. I was satisfied with it. And then my mom bought a phone that had a touch screen. It was a touch button, but what she did to make it easier for me to use was to incorporate felt dot markers on those phones. And, one of the things that I talk to people, I think I mentioned this in the first segment. If I did not, I'll mention it here. That my mom spent a lot of time learning how to adapt the most inaccessible products to make them accessible for me, and wouldn't accept that it could not be done. As many of my family members would often use the "you can't make it accessible" conversation. But here's the reality. You should never say that to somebody who had a braille labeler and a bunch of felt dot markers and things like that for things like the microwaves, the push button microwaves. At age 7, I was already learning how to make different foods. And unfortunately, because of what I suffered in 03 and 04, we talk about that in, I believe, segment 1 or 2. I think it was segment 1 we talked about that. That I've had to relearn a lot of things, but that's where I got my start learning how to cook. And so I could easily walk you through some pretty cool recipes. I've even put together a couple of surprise ones myself when I was a kid, including a mixture with some chocolate cake, and we added a little bit of cherry to it, like a cherry chocolate cake, which I ultimately started just throwing things together, and finally it turned into a cheesecake when I was done. My mom's like, "Hey, if you wanted a cheesecake, you should have just told me. We would have started with that." But hey, nothing wrong with that. That's one of the things that has really kind of something that sticks out at me. Today, however, I am soon going to possibly be on a internet radio network. I don't want to make an official announcement yet till I have everything put together, but I will be announcing on my YouTube channel about it. I've already got my symbol notified. Eventually, we're going to have some changes on there to one of the audio options. And one of the things that I have to say is the people that live with me, Nesma, Jess, and Haley, they have all been very supportive throughout this whole time. And even with all the good, we go through and we find archives. I now do a lot of audio archiving. I'm what you might call an audio archivist by trade. I have a tendency to try to find older stuff. It does not mean that I find everything. In fact, it doesn't mean that I find a lot of things, because there's just things not archived on the web. And many people are you always hear them, well, do you have a recording of this? Do you ever? Well, I wish. But audio archiving for me is not just about what's downloaded on the internet. It's about what you personally archived. And I have some recordings from me from 2002. I'm going to try to find some of those, and I might even put those up on my YouTube channel, just because I know people are going to really want to hear vintage me from then, and me trying to talk somebody through how to do stuff with JAWS 3.2. That's an old classic. Why not dig back into the old tech archive? Why don't you? And that's kind of what we're going to do a little bit with that. But really, in the realm of internet radio, I did a show for quite a few years called the Super Spotlight Show, which a lot of people really liked. And a lot of what that show was centered around was designed not to make any sense. Your whole entire objective is to try to get the listener to listen, not because it makes sense, but because you just are putting a smile on people's faces. What you're doing is you're sort of trying to put smiles on their face. You're trying to give them all that they could possibly have, all the laughter in the world. They got a hard day at work, or maybe they went into work and they're just real tired of listening to their coworkers complain about things they can't change, and so they just want a tune-out mechanism. Well, then they tune in the Super Spotlight Show, and then they wonder why they tuned in the first place, because they're too busy laughing so hard they didn't realize they just got distracted. That's kind of what my show is. It's a real distraction. It's really what I should have called it, Brandon's Real Distraction, because really that's what the show was. It was a mishmash of all kinds of crazy stuff. Unfortunately, because of circumstances out of my control, I don't have a highlight reel that I could queue up here, and I do have an audio set up here that allows me to put anything through this connection that we're using right now to communicate. So I'm on my Mac, so if I really want to, I can pipe my audio any way I want. Another thing I'm a big fan of is something called RVC Voice Changer, because I can do all kinds of different voices with it. And it's an AI voice changer, and you could do things. And we've made models out of old speech synthesizers, like the old Smart Talk speech synthesizer. So if I really wanted to, I could talk through that, and you would think it was the Smart Talk speaking, but you'd be like, wait, when did that synthesizer sound human? I don't remember that. Or the old IBM 7900, I believe it is, that they had. And then, of course, the Speak and Spell, the Pros 2000, which the call text speech, which is what Stephen Hawking's voice used, the late Stephen Hawking, who, of course, we all know who Stephen Hawking is. If you don't, he was a very, very well-known scientist who spent a lot of time with a lot of you hear him a lot. In fact, he even, I think he even starred in a few. I think he was even in a few films. I don't know. He's had the documentaries done on him before, and so of course he so they have a voice based off of him. And there is a huge website that has like a whole lot of voices from varying degree of characters that, and then of course there's people that make their own, and I've done plenty with that with some assistance. I've got the voice of Orpheus, a speech synthesizer from Dolphin Computer Access, Infovox 230, an old speech synthesizer from the old Telia promoter in Solna, Sweden. Back when they owned Infovox, before Acapella ever had bought Infovox, in case anybody's curious about that. So I'm a bit of a speech synthesizer historian of sorts, I have been told by many, because of my dive back into the past as far as the origin of synthesizers and their and then of course now then you can use then being able to use them. And of course I'm also partly behind the NVDA Deck Talk project. I'm not the lead person behind it, but I'm one of the testers and one of the people who's apparently started to get his feet wet in some of the code to help correct some of that, some of the code that's in there. That's about some bugs with it, but I think pretty well got it now. So you could practically run any version that has a DLL file, that's a dynamic link library, and use Deck Talk with NVDA. And Deck Talk is a very, very well-known speech synthesizer. I know what I say is probably going to irritate some because there's a lot of Eloquence fans out here, and I'm aware of that. But technically, I had someone come up to me and say, Brandon, you do realize that Eloquence is the very first software synthesizer JAWS ever used. Actually, that information is completely incorrect. The very first synthesizer that they supported for software was, in fact, Digital's Deck Talk Access 32 synthesizer. Eloquence was added after a lot of testing that was done. Then then of course Keynote from Pulse Data, Keynote Gold Multimedia was the third, and then of course Microsoft SAPI. So Eloquence was actually the second in line. It was the first to be fully integrated as a built-in software synth. So in terms of integration, it's the first synthesizer that's ever been integrated into JAWS. So you learn a little bit about that. But prior, it was not the first software synth to be supported, in fact. So that's one thing that maybe a lot of people don't know. Of course, now retired Eric Damery from what is now Freedom Scientific / Vispero, which was Hunter Joyce back in the day, had done plenty of JAWS tutorials. It basically is from the JAWS 3.0 days, basically in JAWS 2. He's featured in the JAWS 2.0 with Ted Henter. And by the way, in several of the What's New for JAWS versions until recently, of course, and when Dan Clark took over. So there's a little bit of a history for you about that. And you're curious how that relates to me. Because I am a technical enthusiast and have been for so long, these sort of things fascinate me. The radio stations that still use severe weather alert tones. The other day, KMA, or one of our local radio stations here, had a tornado watch, and of course they have this very neat little sound I've always been curious about. It sounds like a sonar blip. I swear somebody up there must have been a sci-fi fan, because when you hear the tornado watch tone, it does. It's a sonar blip, and yes, it gets your attention, but it gets your attention for more than one reason. Because naturally, why would you put a sonar blip in well, I guess that's a good way of saying in space, here comes the weather, I suppose. But being a radio fanatic, I'm a licensed ham radio operator, have been since June of 2005. For any of you hams out there, my call sign is KC0USM, and that is the call sign I've had since 2005. By the way, I got to renew my license this year. Yay me! And my girlfriend Jessica actually became a ham very quickly after passing her test. And I say very quickly because when she took her test, it was around the time of COVID, passed her 1 day before her call sign had already then been issued. The following day, we get a thing and we look her name up on there and she's already got a call sign. I'm like, you got to be kidding. So Jess has been a ham since 2020. So she doesn't have to renew for another 5 years. Lucky. Anyway, but that's the breaks of it. If you have a license for 10 years, you got to renew it every 10 years. Now, that does not mean that your call sign changes for anybody who's not a ham. But what it does mean is it's just like anything. It's like, hey, let us know you still want this. Okay, cool. You do? All right, awesome, fine. And that's how that goes. So that is the ham radio aspect of it. Plus, I am a big user of software-defined radios. A software-defined radio, for those not aware, is a radio that you can hook to your computer. It either comes in the form of a dongle or a USB cable connected to a little box. And then you have software you can control it with, and it's just like tuning a physical radio. Only difference is you can not only fine-tune it, but you can look visually on a visual display for a visual person, and they can see where the stronger signal is, and then they can tune into that stronger signal, so they can kind of reach that signal better or what have you. But the other thing is some SDRs have the ability to transmit, and I do own a couple of them. Although I only own 2, not by purpose, but because one broke. And then, of course, we took a lightning hit last couple weeks ago, and that knocked that one out. So now I'll end up with a third come this month. I swear, these do not manage to escape this fella here, because I'm still in need eventually of a new laptop. I am on my MacBook, but this is not usually the end-all, be-all for my projects, because SDR stuff doesn't really work very well with VoiceOver. But the Windows machine is currently undergoing some issues that need immediate attention, so working on that. But really, I guess in summary, if you want an idea of what I am sumerically now, you know the past, you know the present. What about the future? Well, I'm looking at possibly getting into and trying to do more internet radio shows and hopefully, expand to wider audiences. I have music that I produce through AI. Now, unfortunately, last year, the infection I discussed on the last segment took my voice completely out. And so there is that. The website Suno, SUNO.ai. That's the one that I do a lot of my music productions with. Udio, UDIO.com is another one that I do. And in fact, I have a YouTube video where I actually did share several of my songs in that live stream. It's there still. If you look up Weboroll at gmail.com, WEBBO roll, ROLE, at gmail.com, you might find that you are going to be quite amused, just like my name. There's plenty where that came from. I've got some other videos from 2013, unfortunately from some accounts I can no longer access, let alone use. So they're still there. They will always be there. But then there's a lot of frequent content that I've put up now. Podcast that ends up, really, it didn't go much places. I did an episode. It didn't quite fall into place with the lack of resources, people, and support. So while there's an episode there, it's a good sampler of not really the best sample of what I can do. If you really want a really good sample of it, just wait till we get on the air, and you'll get a bit of a check of that. What about the idea of the new podcast that I want to start, literally called Brandon in the Light? Now, what about it? It's not about me per se, but it's about really talking about your views on today's assistive technology is what I want to go for more or less, and where we are with not only assistive technology, but accessibility in the software realm, be it the gaming platforms or even, other services, even ride shares. What about, you know, um, things like that, things that matter to the community, the things that make you feel like you really have got a chance to put your voice out there. But what we want to do with it is we want to go into the realm of how can we change? We talk a lot about what the problems are, what our opinion of the company is that's doing it. But what can we do as a community to change it? And so I want to focus on that a little bit, and I want to focus on a couple of. I think today you'll get a sample of kind of one of the subjects that came to my doorstep this past week from a person that I will keep anonymous for the sake of privacy, but they brought up an interesting story about their adventures on a Lyft ride where the Lyft driver thought the service dog was a pet and was not able to identify. And that's a common thing you hear. I hear that a lot. But what's interesting is that the Lyft driver did not get mad. And a lot of people say, oh, I know where this is going. The driver probably refused it. No, the driver, however, could not take the person because they could not have dog hair. There's an allergy to dog hair. But what the Lyft driver did, and I never thought I'd see the day or hear the day that somebody was this nice. But what they did was they waited for another Lyft driver to show up and said, this person has a guide dog and needs to be able to get from point A to point B. The Lyft driver helped to reach out to somebody else to see if they could take it, and they just happened to be another Lyft driver. They're friends. These guys are close friends. And I thought, you know what? If more companies did that, hey, if you know somebody who drives for the same company you do, let that be a lesson. That's what I'd like to see more often. If you can't do it, make sure you can get them on with somebody who can. They only had to wait 2 minutes, literally 2. Because, why not? And I think, granted, some waits will be longer. Sometimes you'll see 5, 10, 15 minutes because it depends on how far out somebody else is. But I think that would be a good way to get that going for those who struggle getting on services. I feel like that's a really good start. And I think I think that kind of falls into that whole category of if you want a company to understand accessibility better, to get mad at the company and trash and flame them and make them seem like the worst thing in the world is not going to do that. It's going to take us as a community being more verbal, more vocal, more aware, more able or willing to educate and not so easily upset and afraid to talk. Our silence becomes it's another way. It's another way of saying our silence becomes their ignorance. And I don't know that I want you to stew on that one for just a little bit. Our silence becomes their ignorance. If you think about that, that is so true. We want people to learn, but we're not willing to talk. And I have found that when you gently educate people and you walk them through things, that's one of the most important things you could do. So that's part of it, and that's what I'll be talking a little bit about. And you kind of have a slight sample about what I'm focusing on is the how to better the community aspect, and then also talking about things like celebrities, understanding people with disabilities. There's a common trend among the masses in society today that if you have a multitude of disabilities, you become less recognized than the fan who paid 20, however, $4 or $5 to get some VIP pass. I'm not saying that every VIP pass is $4 or $5. I'm just using kind of an exaggeratory figure here, but you get the point. It's the regard. It's okay, you're not just regarding your fans if you're just regarding your VIP fans, what does that say for the ones who came to see you, who maybe once in a lifetime they'll get to see you and it's your farewell tour, for example, but never get to meet you? Maybe there needs to be something to adapt for that. And I wonder what that is. And maybe some opinions from the masses would be great on that. I think it's something that I want to focus on. That's kind of another subject matter that I want to bring up. I want to talk a little bit about that, and also improving assistive technology in the workplace when you're employed. Letting the employers know I'm not a liability. I'm just the same as you, and I just do things differently. The attitude of I'm capable just like you are, but I need you to make you to make only a reasonable accommodation, not an unrealistic. If they're not a software developer, they can't change the software, but they could certainly reach out to the software developers and say, hey, this person who's visually impaired wants to be able to work here, and I want them here, and they are. And you know how many people are generally going to be more willing to stand up and be willing to work if we're not so demanding, but if we actually just keep pushing. When one pushes back, we keep trying. If at first you don't succeed, try and try again. Keep letting these people be aware that you won't back down because you're, forgive the experiment on getting that done. And I say this simple fact that we really are a community that wants to, I think, be accepted the same as any other community. And I can speak from having multiple disabilities. It's even harder when you have more than one disability and you deal with the judgment of, do you do this, or why do you do this, or why do you do that, which is great. The why do you question, to me, doesn't bother me nearly as much as it bothers a lot of people. And I think a lot of the reason it doesn't is because the initial question I always feel like is I want education. It's what they say about it afterwards that tells me whether they're accepting or judgmental. It's not the question, the first initial question, all the time. It depends really on what they ask, though, too. I mean, obviously there's a thin line there. There's some things you don't ask. I mean, but I'm sure plenty of other guests have gone over do's and don'ts and probably things that they would have found very egregious and perhaps outrageous about some of the questions they've been asked, and who knows what else that they may have encountered. And I'm sure either that or in communicating with some of these people, I'll learn about some of their experiences. And I mean, I read this on Facebook. I see it a lot of times where where I see this common trend. We talk about how, of course, the people they say, well, I really am not a people person. So when this person asks me about how to do this, I'm really afraid to ask, or I'm really afraid to tell them, about my blindness because of what they may or may not say. My answer to that is, if you want a community to learn and accept you, you've got to be as willing to speak as the person is willing to speak to you. It's awkward, socially awkward, if you have the social anxiety and so on and so forth, and if it's difficult to socialize. But be aware of where you are. I'm going to go ahead and give you real quick, again, a rundown about the music services that I do my music for. And if you guys want to hear some of the music, we'll be putting some on my YouTube channel, and some will be on the podcast, and or anybody that wants to hear them, we'll share them. Suno.ai, Suno.ai, and Udio, Udio.com. Those are the two music services that I use. Now, I haven't published them publicly on those sites, but I do have links to the songs that I can send you if you want a link to specific ones that you've heard on my YouTube channel, and you want direct audio, because I know sometimes the links get a little flaky, especially when the websites are difficult. And I've always said if those sites go down, that's going to be sad, because there's really not a whole lot like it out there right now. If there are, I haven't seen them yet. But those are the two of the best that I've seen. And then, of course, for the dialogues, the silly dialogues, I always use play.ai or play.ht. Those are great. I used to use 11 Labs. I do to a point, but 11 has just kind of, for me, become a little more of a hassle with the way they've changed their interface up a little bit. And they're adding models that really don't sound any different than their current model. You can't really tell much of a difference, and there may be a little bit. At least with Play, there is differences in the model clarity, so you know what you're using when you use it. And so that's one of the things that's critical for me, is as an audio producing type person, I look for those differences. And when constructing audio pieces, I want something that sounds different. I want to know what it is when I use it. And I grabbed it. Oh, I used Play Dialogue. Okay. I used Play 3.0 Mini. I want to know what model is being employed when I record. So that's part of the stuff that I do. YouTube channel, as I said, Webborole, WEBBOROLE @gmail.com. That's the most commonly updated channel, and that's where most of my content is shared. Then, of course, there is my Discord, webborole.londini. May eventually change to just Webborole, depending on how I handle that. I need to update because it's broke. They broke the spelling of Londini. The person who helped me with the Discord account broke that. So they put an H there, where it should be LONDINI. It has an H right before that second I. So that'll help you with that. LONDHINI is what they did to that. I will work on that correction at some point. But in the meantime, that's how you can find me on Discord. On Facebook, just look for my name, Brandon Hennis. I'm very easily accessible there. Aaron should know this. That's how he found me. That's how come we are able to message back and forth, besides my WhatsApp, which also exists. Telegram is Chinmouth86 if you want to reach there. Also, I will say that if you are a fan of Audio Jacket, I've recently gotten on Jacket.fm. And I'm going to try to post some stuff up there. It looks like my content already made it there, so we've had some comments on it already. You could do lives and then recordings. I think Jacket's going to become the next, what the old app they used to have was called Dabble, in a lot of ways. They had I remember Dabble back in the day. And Clubhouse, some people still use Clubhouse. Sighted individuals use Clubhouse. A lot of people may not know that, but a lot of celebrities use Clubhouse. So I suppose if you want to interact with them, that's one way to do it. Town halls. So really, that's kind of the short form summary about what I do. Audio, communication, tech archiving, tech history, educating people. With my knowledge, I always tell people, don't ask me if I know everything, because you know what the answer is. Do I know everything? No. Why would I want to know everything? Because frankly, I don't. And do I care? No, not really. Just kidding. But really, we never know everything, because the minute we've learned everything we thought we knew, the next day something changes and it completely alters what we knew before. So we're always learning. We're always going to be learning. The process is always going to be the same. And that's kind of the thing that I feel like is the most important. And I'm also a fan of track meets. I always love to. I haven't gotten to go to one in a while, but I always love to. I'd love to work one time and actually help the PA announcer with some of the PA duties. That would be kind of cool. I don't know. Me and stadium echoes are a little too fascinating for my own good. Looking for people who are into getting samples, out stadium impulses mostly from different areas. That'd be kind of nice. Then I could do some really cool stuff with that. I don't have much in the way of that for sound production. I do play music through Logic Pro. I have a keyboard as well. So, and I love to joke around and talk about random stuff. You know, kind of like the fact that, for example, I had a clock, you know, and unfortunately, one time I got a little mad at it. See, the clock, it had two hands, and they always kept coming apart. Well, it turns out if I wouldn't have thrown my clock out the window, time wouldn't have gotten away from me. So, so there you go. But I always tend to think that life isn't about being serious all the time. That's why they have subscriptions. Oh, that was not good. That's why they have subscriptions to that. That's why they have satellite radio. You know, nobody's too serious. And for you Harry Potter fans, you'll appreciate this reference. If you are really trying not to cut off your boss at the end of the workday, you should never sever your ties. Otherwise, you might be a Slytherin out of that job real quick, and he might take you and shove you out Griffin's door. So now that we've pretty well destroyed about every Harry Potter reference we could possibly think of within about 5 minutes, Aaron, do you have any questions before I really start getting my malfoy of more jokes?
Well, absolutely, and I completely understand everything you've been saying, and I really do appreciate your perspective and all of that. Yeah, definitely. You're very right that we live in a society where we need to do a lot more educating in the right way, and unfortunately, although all of this information exists about, accessible technology, the do's and don'ts of blindness and dealing with blind people and things, it does seem to me that we live in a society where this knowledge is not getting outwards, which is why I'm so appreciative of the art of podcasting, as you can clearly tell, and which is why I'm so happy and proud of you to have your internet radio show, whatever that is. We can connect a little later and talk about it. And you can certainly talk about it in the WhatsApp, absolutely. But what I really
watch you make an appearance on that show too. Wouldn't that be funny?
well, I would love to get my voice on that station. Depending on, I'm sure I probably know. Is it someone that I know? Is it the person that I know who probably owns the station?
I'll give you one clue. One of them is from the Caribbean that reached out to me. And he's got a friend from South Africa that's they're getting their station back off the ground. And I was supposed to start this weekend actually, but some things came up on their end, and I told them, I said, that gives me time. I actually suffered a hand injury during the past week, between segment 2 and 3, that I had to heal from. So I'm finally getting back into the swing of things, and so are they. So I'll be on the watch for that. And so I think next weekend is when I'm supposed to be on. So that's why I said it's not an official announcement yet till I know I'm there.
Well, okay. Well, I know what the station is now. And they're a great friend to us here at Aaron's Opinion. So what time do you think you'll broadcast your first opening show on that station, by the way?
So on Saturdays, we're going to go from New York time. It's going to be 2 to 4. So that's 1 to 3 on my time. And then 3 to 4 on Sundays. That's 4 to 5 Eastern. That's 4 to 5 New York time.
Right.
And we're going to, on the Saturday side, we're going to talk, obviously, because sports is the main subject and focal point on Saturdays. So we're going to really dive into a lot of stuff. We're going to talk a little auto racing. We're going to talk a little about Major League Baseball because we are obviously in the swings and arrows, literally swings of Major League Baseball. Um, in case nobody got the reference, and we are in you know we're not too far from the NFL draft, so we're going to see kind of what's going on with that. And then, of course, on Sunday, we're just going to talk about random, the kind of the weekend review, a little bit of the top technology stories if we can find them. Anything new in the technology side that people are. What is the hot trending topic? And then we're going to kind of go into some fun stuff and humor, random, no holds barred. We're gonna pop the top off, and you're gonna get an hour full of nothing but craziness that you can't forget. And it's amazing how quickly time flies because when you do that, and listen, I'm gonna have to figure out how to pack what's normally 3 hours of content into 1 hour. So I'm gonna have fun with that challenge. I will. They gave me a challenge. Now, I'm okay with that. I am perfectly okay with that. So I'm gonna hold them to it. We'll see how well I do with it. So
Absolutely.
that's
And one thing else too
you're
that you
supposed to
can.
challenge me, doggone it.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right. And one thing that you can do, certainly, I would highly recommend that you do this. I've said this to other people who have internet radio shows. It's very easy to be recording that audio and then just simply take that audio and create a podcast out of the audio after you do the show. So there should be a live show, but then it should also be broadcast as a podcast as
Oh,
well.
you're like me, audio archive. See, again, I keep going back to this whole audio archivist thing.
Right, exactly.
This is why you and
Mm-hmm.
I think this is one reason we get along so well because we understand the whole thing about archiving. We know, I would nearly bet you if somebody had access to your machine, they'd probably find every Aaron's Opinion podcast from the very first to the present. That
Right.
anything that's been done at the very beginning. And here's the bad part. Don't you hate it when you've archived everything? The drive you've archived on has died before you had a chance to put it on there. And then you got to go back and figure out, does anyone else have copies of what you put up? Did you put it anywhere? And thankfully, that's why we have places to upload our archives. So when things like that happen,
Right.
you just can't get rid of us that quickly. You might
Exactly.
think you did, but we got some bad news for you because we're still here.
Right, exactly right. Yeah, definitely. And so yeah, you can easily take your show from the station and then put it into the RSS, whatever company you're going to use for your RSS, and then that can be part of Spotify or wherever you get the podcast. And then one thing you can tell your viewers or your listeners on the radio side is you can say, you can listen to me live on these times, but if you ever miss an episode, don't forget it's available everywhere you get a podcast, and then you can use that to promote what you do. So that's
And
a great use of it.
iHeart is one. I know a lot of people, they scoff, they kind of cringe when I say iHeartRadio, but I would recommend anybody who's broadcasting, if you have the funds to do it, that is a thing to do. Get your podcast up there because then you'll really have a lot of listeners. Not only because not suggesting that the others don't get listeners,
Mm-hmm.
but it then allows mainstream radio stations to advertise your podcast if you so choose to have them advertise it as another podcast in that sort of infantry of new podcasts. Anytime a new podcast goes up, I always hear it on the radio. This new thing going up, like for example, the true crimes of the world. The whole true crimes and stuff, and people talking about all those. There's just all kinds of sportscasts and um, you know, and I believe with some of these, I don't know if Spotify does it or not, but I believe some of them even have talkback features where you can actually record audio messages that you can have then play later for the end user. I don't know specifically which ones those are. I know iHeart does for the radio stations. I don't know if that applies to podcasts or just radio stations. But it really really makes a huge difference, I think,
Absolutely.
when it comes down to it. And plus, now that I also track severe weather um, here locally, which I had to do plenty of that 2 nights ago. I don't know if it ended up in the news, but we had south of us a massive tornado that was in Essex, Iowa. It tore a roof off of a building. No joke, folks. In Essex, Iowa, that tornado was when you hear large and extremely destructive and potentially deadly tornado from the Weather Service. You better be in that tornado shelter, and I mean now. Don't wait till Monday. Okay, get in that shelter immediately, and hopefully that's what they did, because that was a pretty intense storm that day, and we managed to miss it somehow because it went around us and curved from one end to the other, and I mean, the most we got out of it was a torrential downpour. That just goes to show you guys how much weather I track every year. But I hasten to remind everybody, dry winter usually around here means very active spring. So we'll see if that holds true this year or if that was just a fluke and we end up with a very dry rest of the spring. We're going to find out as time goes. But
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. It's very, very interesting. You can learn a lot about tracking severe weather and all of that. It's very, very important to be able to do that. So that's really good. Yeah.
and I get the question a lot of times, well, you're totally blind. How are you doing this? Well, number one, it's not just the fact that my girlfriend's got some vision and can use radar apps, and we use the Weatherology app quite a lot. And I must give a shout out to the 6 people that provided voices for the audio forecast side of that, because they did a really good job of putting those together. Talking about Paul Tremblay, Derek Height, Laura Lockwood, Jennifer Wojcicki, Megan Mulford, and Ray Miller. Those particular 6 individuals, they're very synonymous with weatherology. They've been an active, integral part of weatherology for a while, including, really, they've integrated a lot of their technology into a lot of radio stations across the country, actually. I don't know if they do it there, but they've really become a very popular weather source, kind of like AccuWeather was back in the day. And I'm not suggesting, I think some still have AccuWeather, but AccuWeather used to be the most common one, I think. And then Weatherology, which used to be WeatherEye back in the day, they've been around for a very long time. And I think, quite frankly, I think that to be able to produce all that audio, and you got to think, you're producing for radio stations around the country. So to think that you have to pronounce so many town names and know how they're said, and you just go with what sounds right, and yet it still works. That takes a lot of work. And so I really, really give them credit for that. But that's one thing. And then the other thing is, if you've ever tracked a storm using the static of lightning, and I'm going to tell you a little secret, you need an AM radio to do this. But here's the trick. You get an AM radio. As soon as you hear there's going to be thunderstorms, whatever time they say they're supposed to fire, turn your AM radio on. If you go to blank frequency that's got nothing, keep listening. There's little cracks that sound like, they're little scratches that sound like a record player, like you're starting to get scratches in your record player. I call them the lightning crash. I call it lightning static, because that's all it is. It's just little discharges that go through the airwaves, and then you hear them when they hit. The closer they are, the closer the storm. The more distant the lightning is, and the more distant the sound, the further it is. But there's another thing you listen for. How frequent are the crashes of lightning over the airwaves? If it's extremely frequent, then the storm's very active. During the tornado warning, and I actually have this archived, there is so much lightning static that one of the local radio stations that we normally can pick up at full scale is actually totally drowned out by the lightning. Like, it is to the point where you can't even understand anything they're saying because there's so much lightning that it's not even audible. That is literally how much tracking I can do. And so it's not even just about that. I live in a trailer that's aluminum, the old 1960s style trailer, and it has, when it rains, you hear it on top of the roof, and there's a metal roof in the right above our restroom, and when big bouts of rain hit it, you can usually tell ding, ding from inside there too. So you hear that, you know it's raining outside. You don't hear it as much with the snow because of the flakes being so tiny, but you definitely know when it's raining outside. That's one thing about this trailer is I don't ever have to doubt the rain. So, that's why it makes doing this stuff for radio stations so much fun, because the station rep tell me, and this was very refreshing. They said, you are tracking storms in a way that most of us who are fully sighted don't even think about, because we're sitting here telling you about the clouds and about the significance of but you can track the lightning so well that we don't have to ask how frequent the lightning is. We could just ask you. And I said, yeah, because the AM, again, that's where the AM radio and the tracking comes in. And then, of course, using SDR receivers, I can also track the more closer lightning on deeper frequencies that don't pick up the distant lightning static. So, like on the air traffic bands. So, if you hear it on them, then you know the storm's really close. And that's how I can tell if the lightning directly in my spot is continuous or if it's kind of, far out. So, and of course, the weather radio. You can't be without one of those. So you always try to get those and keep those on hand. So that's kind of how I do a lot of what I do every day. So you know a little bit about my music. You've learned about how to contact me, for one. And by the way, I need to warn everybody, I have 2 Facebooks, and I don't know if Aaron ran into this, but the trick is when you add me, when you look for me, what you really want to do is look for the me that has posts dated in this year, 2025. Now, if you're listening to this in 2026 or 2027 or 2028, because this podcast will be in the archive by then, and I'm pretty sure Aaron's opinion ain't going anywhere anytime soon. There's going to be many years of Aaron's opinion.
Hopefully. God willing.
Hopefully.
Say, right? Absolutely.
Well, as they say, the Lord willing and the creek don't rise, I'm pretty sure you'll be right there to keep them company.
Right. Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
you're very right.
That's
very
it.
Right.
Is.
And
So
in the description, we'll put your. I think in the description we'll put your Facebook link in the description so that they can find
Indeed.
the real.
You are more than welcome to.
Yeah. That would
yes.
be
The other account of me is actually an older one that I haven't used in some time. I revived it briefly, but then. To say nothing of forgetting the password after I reset it, Right. But that Facebook is an older Facebook that I had way back in the day. This one I created a little later on, and believe it or not, if I told you what the email address provider was for this Facebook, then you'll really know it needed to be that it's a good thing I updated some of the other email parameters. Its original email provider was aim.com.
Really?
Not just the KC0USM at Gmail that we all know about. This was which is my email, by the way, KingCharles0USM, KC0USM at Gmail. That's the one that I usually tell people to send their major emails to, or invites, or station info, or anything like that. If you want me to be on your station, or Zoom, Meet, whatever your software method is, send it there, because my WebOroll at Gmail, which is my Android account, gets flooded with all kinds of emails from companies that I've either purchased from or from other things like that. So I tell people you're better off sending it to my main email address, which is my ham call sign, KC0USM@gmail. But the old email address, I used to go by the nickname keyboard player on a lot of things. So it'd be player 2007 at AIM. That used to be my AOL Instant Messenger email. And I think anybody that knows anything about AIM will know the voice of Elwood Edwards. You've got mail. Anytime you had email come into the inbox.
That was one of the most iconic. If you look back to sounds of the 20th century, that one was one of the most iconic sounds ever. The "You've got mail," absolutely.
Goodbye. Yep. Remember that? And it's funny. Very I have those sounds in my archive. So a friend of mine who lives in California got this bright idea to go in, and between him and a whole bunch of people, they literally managed to get and find sounds from all the old messengers, all the old OSs, and package them into what they call the OS Sound Kit. And in this kit is, I think the only thing they don't have is the Yahoo sounds. But they have the AOL sounds, like the AIM message received, message sent. And let me tell you, you never get bored hearing those old sounds. Now, I remember back in the day you'd get bored because, man, my computer, this fellow's over here sending me 25 messages. I'm trying to do my dishes up here in the kitchen. But then now you're like, I remember them sounds back in the day, Sonny. We used to use those with AOL, America Offline. Yeah, and somebody listening is.
I don't think you'll be a spokesperson for that company now.
See, but the problem with that is, I'm sitting there thinking, no, it's America Online, Grandpa, and he's thinking, yeah, but it was offline for me. I had to call them 500 times. Well, it's not my problem. Maybe you should have called them at business hours.
You know what just occurred to me, what just popped into my brain here is, you love doing accents and voices, right?
Yes, I sure do.
Well, that's good. Well, you should reach back out to that person who has a name that sounds like a type of music, because now I know who it was for sure. You should reach out to them and say that you want to do voice acting and see what their response is. They do have some voice acting that you can do.
Oh, that was a very bad idea you just gave me, because I'm going to do it too. And you do realize if you're asking that, boy, you might have bit off a tad more than you could chew there, Aaron. Because you know what they used to say in New York about that, right? If you want me to do any voice acting here, you better give me my coffee. And if you don't, I'll have to mop the floor with you.
Yeah, you can totally portray characters. You can totally do it.
I do my best. Sometimes I mess up a little bit, but that's why they call them bloopers.
Unbelievable. Give me an Eastern European voice.
I don't know if I could quite do that, but quite the accent. I do a voice, a broken English. I very speak little. Understand? I need you to speak slow.
My God, yeah, I wasn't even sure if you knew what that sounded like. Yeah, that was actually pretty close.
I remember getting a call from a guy one time, and it was one of those scammers, because we all get those. And this guy picks up the phone, and I was like, hello. He goes, I'm here to tell you have a virus on your computer. I said, computer? I have a computer? No, virus on your computer. Listen, my electronics do not fart. Yours may. Thank you for calling. Have a nice day. And drop the call faster than they could think about it.
Faster than God would hear the news, right?
Yeah, pretty much. So fast. God asked me what was happening.
All right. I see.
Yeah, it's like for the official news report, God now transfers the mic to Brandon. What? How this happened? I thought you was the one that knew before I did. Well, I did until that happened. Now I need the news from you. It's like an annual newspaper, you know. Who's going to write the article? It'll probably be me, man. And when I do that, I promise you, I will not publish it until you ask me to. Understand?
Incredible. My God. We gotta get you behind the mic more often.
See you get me behind the mic, they might not hear me. No, I'm kidding. This is what happens. I mean, this is what happens when I get to, you know, we go into who I am today, and now everybody gets a taste of reality.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, did you say a taste of reality, Sonny? You want me to take you behind the bush and whip you?
My God, we gotta get you doing more voice acting, because there's a ton of
some madman's listening to this podcast going, well, Bill, I don't think that's too funny right now. He's impersonating me. I'm going to take him out to the farm and use my switch. Well, buddy, you better find me first. That's all I got to say to that.
Well, one thing I can say is, yeah, we should definitely get you doing some voice acting. So there's this, and I've done a little bit with voice acting with them too. Zollyhood, of course, as you know, Zollyhood Universe. But if you're able to portray different characters, then they'll have you doing several different roles. Now, I've only worked with Jazzy.
I'm very sure.
I've only worked with Jazzy a few times over the years.
Oh, yes.
And we know of each other, but we don't always talk. We don't talk a whole lot, but we know of each other. But I will say that if you're able to portray and maintain a specific character, let's say you had to do both one character, which I'm sure you can easily do, would be like the stereotypical New Yorker mafia voice, and then
you better believe it. Here, you better give me my coffee too.
Yeah, that's exactly
Where the hell's my coffee, Aaron?
What about Valley Girl? Can you give me a Valley Girl?
I'm dude, totally. If I try, I probably sound really weird and really awkward.
You're doing it.
God.
Yeah, that's exactly the accent.
Hey, where's my makeup, man?
I don't know, dude. Maybe you shouldn't have left it on the lawn. Some country guy's looking at him going, hell, I tell you, if you put this makeup on the wrong way, it might actually set off our smoke detectors. You better be careful when you walk up in here, all right?
My God. Because you see, here's the thing. If you're able to portray different characters and maintain them, right?
Portray. Yeah, I feel bad for him. Don't worry.
Let's say that you're able to maintain a couple different voices like that. Mm-hmm. And then if a good storyline comes along, then Jazzy would definitely use you to embody both of those personas, and that could be really, really fun.
Hell, it's bad enough I can make up a storyline on the spot. I could be sitting here. Just imagine, right? You're walking outside, somebody up on the front lawn, and they got that dog barking. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I do vocal sound effects. And suddenly this neighbor looks at you.
Hey, I want to tell you something there, baby girl. You got that dog stand up there.
And has no idea it's a guy she's talking to. And the guy goes, well, I tell you what, I appreciate it, but if I look like a girl, you better give me the right apparel, or I'm going to have to come out here with my cup of coffee and pour it on your head. Poor thing. Well, all she did was let you know your dog was loose. Doggone it. I don't give a damn. She said I was a girl. Well, maybe you should have said who you was first.
So this is what you do all day. You let your brain just go through these.
I let my brain do what it wants, and I just go with it.
Well, that's a good thing to do in life, man. You just go for it. That's really incredible.
I was told I should be a stand-up comedian, but see, the problem with that is I'm still sitting down. All right, that's the only issue. He's like, no, you just ruined it. No, I'm kidding.
No, I don't think. Yes, you are hilarious, but no, I think your voice is geared more towards voice acting and portraying characters on a cartoon.
Voice
I could
acting,
definitely see it.
portraying, and radio broadcasting go hand in hand in some ways.
Absolutely,
'Cause
they all do. Absolutely.
radio hosts love it. I mean, I'm waiting for the day I could call into a terrestrial radio show. I'd be like, hey, I'm calling in for this contest here. My name is Large, Larz. All right, now, I want you to make sure that I've got all of these rules down. You want me to be the 10th caller? What number am I? Oh, my God, I'm caller 5. I'll call you tomorrow. Some radio station going to be looking at your podcast going, we ain't letting him call in.
No, some radio stations are going to be looking at Aaron's Opinion wondering, why on earth did Aaron's Opinion even agree to interview Brandon Hennis?
and then I'm going to be like, because they did. See, kind of like your front porch swing doubles as your couch. Jeff Foxworthy was talking about ways to tell you might be a redneck, and he left one out. If your front porch swing doubles as your couch, or for that matter, if you've mistaken your love seat for the front seat of your van, you might be a redneck. If funny. Your wedding rehearsal has the phrase, my car won't start, you might be a redneck. I am not making this up. My aunt, one of my aunts on my dad's side of the family, actually had this happen to her at a wedding. If you've ever been to the wedding and as soon as the wedding vows are said, I do, and you hear a neighbor screech out of the driveway of the church building, you might be a redneck. Turns out that neighbor was my aunt's, shall I say, not so pleasant cousin. And we will, but listen, we don't talk about that around here. That's a curse word up in these parts.
You brought it up.
I know I did. And then I brought it down. You see, that's why the sky is changing color.
Oh boy, this is.
You can see where this is going, can't you?
The more you talk, the more scared I get.
You shouldn't be scared. I'm not wearing Freddy Krueger's costume yet.
No, you don't need to. You don't need to wear a scary costume. Your whole persona, your whole illuminating persona, is just.
Ooh, that's
riveting.
Bad.
You really have a riveting persona. You definitely do. Yeah.
You have forgotten who you are, and so forgotten me. You recognize where that line came from?
I would probably be able to guess off air, but I'm not good at guessing on air for a variety.
Well, I'm going to tell the listeners on air, because I'm pretty sure ain't none of them going to guess it. They probably will, but it would have been Mufasa and the Lion King when Rafiki takes Mufasa or takes Simba to an area where he thinks he sees Mufasa, he gets to have, and that's how Simba decides. That's his awakening and his decision to go back to Pride Rock and take over what was rightfully his.
Right. I do vaguely remember that scene. Yeah, I vaguely do. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, he's with Timon and Pumbaa for quite a while before he realizes that actually that's not where he was meant to be.
Right. Exactly.
As a kid, he's still trying to process everything, but as he gets older, something hits him. And I thought about the life lesson learned in that, right? As when we're kids and we go through traumas, and this is where the advice that I always try to give everybody, I always have a word of encouragement. And this is my word of encouragement for this episode, is when you go through trauma in life, when you go through trauma in any situation, for a period, you may forget who you are or where you came from. But remember that forgetting that for long enough may cause you not to heal. Instead, may hold you back. So the longer you stay away from acknowledging who you are, the longer the healing process. So the best method of healing is to remember who you are, where you came from, and know that it doesn't have to define you. Your bad experiences in life don't have to be what define you. In fact, what you should do is take those bad experiences as a lesson of what you don't want in your life in the future. Learn to set healthy boundaries. Learn to approach people with love, kindness, and care. Learn to help 1,000 people with one kind word. Put love in your heart and begin to build a bridge that is greater than the bridge ever built by mankind. But it starts with the tools in your heart, not the tools you use by hand. And if you can do that, you can not only heal yourself, but you could help others heal in the process.
If you don't mind
That's
me
sort of
saying,
my...
if you don't mind me saying, I didn't actually ask you to give a perfect ending to an episode where we wrap it all up and say, so if there's anything else you want to say it, because if I had asked that question, that's exactly what I would have wanted you to say, and I could not have asked for a better life lesson. Basically,
Thank you.
Basically, in as we say it in a similar way: help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow. Build the bridge today so that you'll have an even bigger bridge tomorrow of helping people to connect and helping people to have all these great conversations.
That's
We
right.
will definitely get you. The more we, in a few minutes, the more we speak off air, I'll give you more suggestions and more ideas. But we will absolutely get your podcast out to the masses, and we will absolutely get you back onto the internet radio side. But also, we'll make sure that you have an RSS feed that can be placed on all the main players. Apple is the main one. It's interesting you brought up iHeartRadio. Yeah, no, iHeart. I mean, it's Aaron's opinion is there on iHeart, but very few people in the demographic actually listen to it there. Most of the download comes from Overcast and Apple, is what most people choose for
I guess I need
podcasting.
to get your podcast out there. Maybe I'll do that on a local radio station. Maybe I'll send them an email and say, hey, you got to look at this podcast.
That would be one. That would be amazing.
There you go.
Absolutely amazing. And you can always send my information to other people too. I have a
Indeed.
blurb that you can send out to people, and people can look for it on iHeart, and it's there. It's just over the years. Do you know who else? You know who else would love to nerd out with you? Do you know? Oh no, my brain is. I'm blanking on the name.
I'm your brain, and I can't think right now. Sorry.
Yes, exactly.
Oh.
Exactly. Oh, now I got it now. Do you know? Are you friends with Lou Kolb on Facebook?
I've heard of him. I don't know if I.
Well, stop hearing
have
of
him or
him
not.
and start friending him. He worked in terrestrial radio for 30 years as a blind person in the 70s, and he is also a ham like us. He also geeks out about audio like us. He also loves helping people like us. Lou Kolb's amazing. Did you hear the episode where I sat down with Lou Kolb?
I did, and
was
quite impressed with what I
Lou
heard.
is an impressive. Lou has just like you and I. Lou is a wealth of information. He absolutely is. Yeah.
About building connections,
Holy moly! Yeah, you should definitely connect with Lou Kolb.
You know what the brain and a mixer have in common?
Oh God.
They have many connections. Whoops! I want you to process, stew on that one for a second. There's somebody listening to us going, he's quite the individual. Beat him up!
You definitely have mastered the art of calling attention to yourself. If you've always wanted to do that, you've definitely done it now. Definitely people will know who Brandon Hennis is at this point.
Listen, I tell people I don't like to call attention to myself. It's just my sense of humor just kind of does it for me. I just let my brain do what it wants, and then
I don't think you can help yourself. I don't think you could help yourself.
I think I'm beyond help, Aaron. What do you mean?
I don't think.
I think I'm beyond help. That's okay though.
Seriously, absolutely seriously, you definitely should be friends with Lou Kolb on Facebook, and he'll definitely get you connected with more radio people for sure. And
Indeed.
Lou is just a wealth of knowledge about the radio industry. And anyway, bringing it all back to where I was saying about
how it changed and stuff.
Well, and that's what Lou can tell you is what happened during the 90s. There were a lot of cultural. First of all, the 90s is when things really started to change in radio. There was, of course, a company that you will know instantly when I say Cumulus. Some company called Cumulus had a idea to basically unite all the stations. And what happened was the same thing that happens now. The person at the top of the pyramid gets to be heard, and everybody else doesn't get to be heard. Is a simulation, a theory of sort of what happened over time.
And then locally owned stations that don't run by way of those media networks, they don't care. They're like, all right, you want to do stuff for us? Cool. Just tell us what you want to do and we'll figure out how to get it in there, and it's amazing. But then you go to these big stations that are on these big media networks and they're like, well, you're going to have to pass this and you're going to have to know this, It's gotten to the point where the only traffic sign you see anytime you drive by that radio station is do not pass go, do not collect $200. Well, doggone it. Hasn't the landscape changed, I swear.
So, yeah. So then there was a time, a swell, where iHeart was very popular. And I think iHeart still has a popularity, but it's less popular now.
I think Odyssey, now the ones that are doing it is radio.com. That was a thing for a while. And then Odyssey is kind of coming up. And then, but then, of course, the fact that everybody's using satellite radio. Let's not forget that you've got satellite radio. You've got, and honestly, though, like I tell everybody, and a lot of people give me flack for this, but I'm going to stand by this until the day I'm gone. If you really want my honest opinion, if you are that quick to throw out your analog radio, something's wrong, because there may come a day where you get a storm come in and that internet connection that you've been so reliant on, whether phone, satellite, or otherwise, is gone, and you have nothing. You need that main radio. But in saying that, I'm going to call out these local radio stations and say, you need to be more aware of the local disasters in your area. Stop leaving it to just one radio station for weather coverage in a metropolitan area of over 2.3 million people. You need to have more than one radio station be willing to put their coverage out there and let people know what's going on. Because there may be people that, because they listen to your station thinking, okay, this station will let us know what's happening in the event of an emergency. None of the TV stations always say tune to channel blah, blah, blah. The radio stations they give you the specific details. But what if they don't hear it? What if the EAS system alert was missed because they turned the radio on? They're home late from work. That's why we need to stop. I don't mind the idea of national programming, national syndication, but when that's all you stream and your station does not have local programming at all. In fact, we have a station here in our area that's a talk station, and all they stream is nationally syndicated programming. I'm not entirely okay with that for the simple reason that when we had the other day nearly damaging tornadoes, and the talk station that I normally listen to actually went and had live coverage. They actually stayed on throughout the duration of it. They did wall-to-wall coverage. Excellent job, because they care about their listeners. I'm not saying the other station didn't, but the other station wouldn't break into their live programming to cover that tornado, and people rely on that station as the, quote, news talk station. Weather is news. Come on, guys. If you know this, cover it. Several music stations, the same thing. They didn't break in to cover it. And a lot of the other stations where they have the ministries, it's sad to say, they don't have any severe weather teams here for some of these stations. So I have been tempted to reach out to these stations and say, if you guys need a severe weather team to cover tornadoes when there's wall-to-wall issues, if I need to have someone drive me there, I'll do it, because I don't care. I want the community safe, I want them protected, and I want them well. And because now that I know you're on iHeart, I can put that out there and say that loud and clear. I will be that voice if I need to be.
Go for it. I'm not stopping you.
There you go.
Thank you. And Brandon, I really think this is a beautiful way to wrap up today with everything you do.
Thank you.
You do so much great stuff, man, for the community, and we're just lucky to have you around doing all these voices and this whole persona, and all of your passion for audio broadcasting and really helping other people is
Thank you so much.
Really, really good. So we'll definitely get these episodes out, and we'll definitely help you to get on the airwaves and make sure that the world knows who Brandon Hennis is, and we'll make sure that listeners of Aaron's Opinion make sure that they know how they can listen to more Brandon Hennis, because you're doing a tremendous amount of great stuff.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely, man. And so thank you so much. We'll of course pick up the conversation in a bit, but of course, until next time, Brandon, thank you again for giving us 3 installments. This has been incredible. I've done this with very few people, so thanks for giving us the 3 installments you gave.
Indeed.
And I think people will really enjoy this series, and they will really. I think we'll get a lot of comments, and a lot of support will come out of this in the end. So this is
indeed my pleasure. And you guys also don't forget to, share the word, spread the word. Let's get Aaron's Opinion out there. Let's let people know about it. Let's get this. Let's really start to get the word going. I mean, he needs
Absolutely.
more. These podcasts don't happen without listener support. So you guys reach out to him, get the word out. He can, we'll get you the links on the programs. We'll also, maybe we'll even try to, get in touch. We'll maybe do a special with him on our programs. So I want you guys to be ready, because this is going to be a ride you guys are never going to forget, and hopefully I won't forget either. So
you won't forget, but at least it's all being recorded. So if you do forget, we can just go back to the recording.
Memory recall. There you go.
There you go. All right, everybody. Brandon, seriously, thank you so much. And that finally brings us to the conclusion of a fascinating series with Brandon Hennis. There you go. That's Brandon Hennis. Now you know. Take care, everybody. My name's Aaron's Opinion. This is Aaron Richmond from Aaron's Opinion Podcast. Of course, we want to thank everybody for listening to this bit of an extended series here, which we don't always do, except for when we really need to tell the full story. And now you know the rest of the story. Now you know the past, present, future, up, down, left, right. Now you know who Brandon Hennis is. All right, everybody. There you go. Aaron's Opinion. Help one person today. Help 1 million people tomorrow.